Aujourd'hui, je vais parler de how I feel about the Sopranos now. Well, now that I'm I guess the age Tony Soprano was when the show began. Rather than compared to, when I first saw it as a young man, just starting out in life. Oh boy, what a difference a decade or two makes. Hey, XenPuck here. Another day spent just goofing around, doing whatever I want. I mean, hey, what's the point of retiring early if I can't spend the majority of my days consuming media without a care in the world, right? I mean, I've watched so much junk in the last 2 years that I'm basically out of new shows that I'd have a remote interest in. But luckily for me, the streaming wars has brought essentially basically every show since I started watching TV back in view. So right now I'm in the middle of a Sopranos marathon. It's hard to believe that this show started when I started college. It's 99, around that year, right? And back then, to be honest, I didn't have cable, okay? So I guess I first actually watched the show in its entirety while I was in my early 20s, okay? Dudes, I think, generally love gangster shows, and I am definitely part of that basic crowd. But no shame in enjoying The Sopranos. Obviously, this is one of the best reviewed television series of all time, and considered generally the beginning of the prestige TV era, after all. So today I'll share with you some thoughts about how I'm enjoying my trip down memory lanes, and how this fine piece of art has aged and is changing right in front of my own eyes. Point number one. As a youth, I watched gangster shows because I wanted to see violence and people getting clipped and whacked, and to live vicariously through the eyes of gangsters, because they seem to be the kind of person that get what they want, right? And isn't there some part of all of our reptilian brains that just wants to get what we want immediately, right? So The Soprano was first and foremost a gangster show that's set in an area that I'm fairly familiar with, being from New York City, the center of the tri-state area. But now that I've slipped past that dreaded middle-age boundary, oh my god. I have to say, though, that I do feel better than I have ever felt before because of, early retirement and all. Anyway, since watching this show recently, I have to recategorize it entirely, because now I think about this show, instead of a gangster show, I think it's a family show whose patriarch just happens to be a gangster, right? In the same sense that I would call a show like The Walking Dead, people think it's a zombie show. I think it's not really about the zombies at all, right? Both the mob in The Sopranos and the undead in The Walking Dead, in these respective shows, they give it some color, sure. But now I really don't look forward to or care about the violence or the cheap thrills of, in the Sopranos case, the naked bada bing girls or whatever. Instead, I look forward to all the interactions between the family members of the Sopranos family unit, both the familial kind and the other kind, right? And I can finally appreciate some of the finer, subtle acting that made people love this show. It's not even just the dialogue and the writing, but also the body language and the looks, between the main cast members, right? What's unsaid between people with meaningful relationships can be just as, if not more effective, than a bullet to the head. Who knew? Well, definitely not me when I was in my early 20s, right? But now, my goodness, this show is just a joy, and I'm barely halfway through it as of right now, okay? Point number two. Oh boy, I probably shouldn't mention this without looking like a Piggly Wiggly, but I have actually been taking physical notes about the food that I've seen on the show, right? Now, I'm actually kind of curious what regular, even more basic Americans than me would think about all the Italian dishes being referenced on The Sopranos. Because to me, I call myself a New Yorker, I thought I had at least a cursory understanding of Italian food, because I grew up there, at an introductory level. But still, this show has pleasantly surprised me with already several dishes that I feel like compelled to, mandatory, I have to go make it on my own. So let me just rat off a few. And remember, I'm only halfway through, not even halfway through. I'm on season 3 right now, right? Number 1 is crown roast. Oh boy, Carmela makes one of these, or may have just referenced one for a family dinner scene, and I looked it up, and I immediately fell in love, okay? A dish made out of pork that looks like it's straight out of like a Game of Thrones episode. Ding ding ding, sold. I feel like this might be an expert level type of roast, but I will definitely try it, okay? Number 2, Italian tripe dish. Have you seen this one? I didn't even know that Italians ate tripe, but it was referenced in the show as something that even modern Italian Americans are losing their taste for, which I thought was extremely empathizable. But anyway, I found a really reasonably easy recipe for this item already, and it sure looks very different than how I normally would make tripe, so got me very excited. And number 3, in terms of food, actually peripheral to the show, but just because I was randomly looking up Italian cooking and recipes because I'm watching The Sopranos, this last recipe is the infamous Brooklyn item of lard bread, or maybe it's called prosciutto bread, or maybe it's called tortano bread, apparently for certain Italian holiday meals only. This one, you know, it's Sopranos adjacent because I don't think, so far at least, it's not featured on the show. But the show got me into an Italian food mindset, and now I can't wait to go find some pancetta or guanciale. I mean, these additional new fascinating cured pork products that's not bacon sounds amazing, okay? And point number 3. And finally, here's the thing, right? The big difference between when I was a 20-something and watching the show now is really this, right? I used to think that gangsters had it all, right? Because they can take what they want, and that made them seem powerful. But now when I rewatch this show, I feel like the gangsters from the mobsters on The Sopranos, individually, they're just another cog in the machine, right? Not in actuality that different from a corporate employee that I was for so many years, right? Sure, I mean, there's a big difference. They can take what they want by force immediately, right? And that might make them feel powerful in the short run. That's the thing, in the very short run. The time frame is important because the recurring theme of a gangster or mobster's life is that there's this immense buildup of pressure, right? Pressure of what? Of being caught, having to pay up to the guy above you, and having to take care of your family even though your income is kind of not very stable, right? And the end game is always bookended by essentially death or prison. And for what, right? I googled Tony Soprano, you know, the fictional character's net worth, and he is said to be worth around $6 million. $6 million! Okay, I mean, that's very good. It's certainly a lot more than most Americans, right? But let's face it, is that the amount that is worth to be constantly looking one's shoulder? I'd say, yeah, no, okay. Heck, right now, I'm within striking distance of that amount, and I've never had to be afraid for my life, alright? So in exchange for that bursts, you know, tiny little quick bursts of short-term feeling of power, gangsters give up their ability to live mentally free in a society of law, right? And to me, now that just seems like a ridiculous trait, right? I don't think I would have been able to explain this point to my younger self, even if I tried and had a time machine, right? So yeah, this realization has really made me appreciate my own life's choices, to say the least. So what about you guys? Do you feel like watching The Sopranos again, or any other older shows? I find it also amusing that my wifey and I pick up totally different things when we're just, you know, superficially skimming it. She mentioned that she thought that the home decor just looked very outdated, whereas I, as a dude, of course didn't notice any type of home decor at all, and was more fixated on a brand of cereal Tony and his kids were munching on instead. I don't know why. I guess because he's kind of, you know, chunky, right? I wonder too if I'll reach any other realizations by the time I finish binging this show, right? It's quite something, isn't it, to have an occasional television show that, to me, has really withstood the test of time, right? Also made me think of how young Gandolfini was when he went. That's a sad thought, but then it turned into a happy one because his death also reminds me of why I left corporate work, or aka unfulfilling work, right? Because anyone can go at any time, right? And that's also part of The Sopranos, the show, isn't it? Anyone can go at any time. before it became a trope, you know, in plenty of other serious dramas, right? Boy. Every day I thank my lucky stars that I can spend it exactly how I personally would like. Without any boss to answer to, that's what I call freedom. So cheers. À la prochaine.